You are listening to the Cattle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentek Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentek Consultants. I am Jim, your eminently wonderful and loquacious host, and with me, as always, is my partner.
I'm Rocco.
I'm
just trying to get over what he just said.
See, and that's the problem.
I can't even process it.
See, because you can't process, that's why people have to suffer through the most important part of the show, which is the terrible engineering joke of the week. All right, so here we go, Rocco. Ready? So look, we've been in a technical arena for a long time, right? And it's funny how in a technical arena, right, we work with people from different educational backgrounds, and they can see the same thing so very differently. So, for example, right, someone like you, Rocco, right, you get a graduate with a finance degree. They can look at something and they ask, how much will this cost, right? Whereas you get a graduate with a science degree, he looks at it and he says, hey, why does this work? A graduate with an engineering degree, he looks at it and he says, how does this work? Right? And then you get a graduate with a liberal arts degree who looks at it and says, would you like fries with that? No. Oh, absolutely terrible. See, folks, that is Rocco's fault. He makes you suffer through those.
That was just horrible.
That was just horrible. It was terrible. That's all right. We've got better things to talk about. So today we have some special Autodesk guests on our show today, and they are not our usual suspects. We have Dave Simeone, the Senior Product Manager for Civil Products at Autodesk, and John Sayre, Autodesk's Technical Marketing Manager. So gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the show today.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, man. Yeah. We really appreciate you taking the time. So, all right, so let's kind of jump into it today, right? So we're going to be talking today about collaboration for Civil 3D, right? What is it really? But whenever we have guests on, we like to give them a chance to introduce themselves to our audience so they will know how brilliant you guys are. So let's start with Dave then. Dave, we'll start with you. What's your background, and how did you get to where you are at Autodesk?
Yeah, I'm still struggling I'm looking up loquacious. I want to make sure.
If you were loquacious, you wouldn't have to look it up.
That's true. I've been called a lot of things. Let's see. That would have been a good one. But anyway, no, it's a pleasure to be joining you guys today. So I've been with Autodesk. I actually count in sabbatical years now. So it's 6.5 sabbatical years.
Nice.
So that's 1997. And for those of you with my color here, you remember Sofdesk and DCA. That's where I got my start. So I actually joined the civil engineering CAD world in 1989 with DCA, which became part of Sofdesk, transitioned into Sofdesk, and then we joined Autodesk. And I've been involved with the product management side of our civil engineering products since. So I'm based in New Hampshire. I'd say probably for me the big things that I've had the opportunity to work on as a PM, originally it was Land Desktop, but then, really from the very start of Civil 3D. And now I'm looking after really the portfolio, but I have a specific focus on collaboration for Civil 3D, which is what we're here to talk about today. So it's a pleasure to meet you guys.
Yeah, same here. See, we've
Nice
been
to
working,
meet you.
even though I didn't work directly with you, man, I've been working with your products since you started. All the way back in 89 with DCA, the same stuff. All right, so John, let's get you in here. What about you, sir? What does a technical marketing manager do at Autodesk, and how'd you get there?
Well, I want to thank you, too, for having me on today. And so a technical marketing manager, we've got a little bit of a different role. We do wear several hats. I'm a technical marketing manager, and I focus on civil infrastructure. So I use all of the, I say quote-unquote infrastructure products in the AEC collection. I'm forced to use Revit every now and then.
Yeah, they make us do that even when we don't want to.
They do. But anyway, so what we do is we create assets for marketing to use, like videos, things of that nature, generate data sets, because crazily enough, people don't just give us data sets. We have to generate our own so that we can take the software through its paces and things of that nature. And we work on this thing called global launch every year, and then we have periodic launches where, like the one that we had here for C4C3D, and we have to generate marketing material for that. And then also we kind of take care of like a train-the-trainer type thing. We teach or help to push out the new features and things of that nature to our TSCs behind the walls of Autodesk. I've been in civil engineering for over 26 years. I actually started using DCA, and then I went to Sofdesk and all of that. So I can definitely stand right there next to Dave. I didn't know that he worked at Sofdesk for the longest time, but always heard his name and actually kind of looked up to him. I can't believe I said that on this podcast. But anyway.
Oh, now there's evidence. He's never going to let you hear the end of that.
Yeah.
This is recorded. I'm psyched.
Yeah, you can believe that. So anyway, I work for several companies here in Missouri in the Midwest. Some of them fairly large, and some of them just me. Okay, just me and an engineer. So I've kind of been on either end of the gambit on using the product in a way that there's going to be multiple people working on a project, and then maybe just one person working on a project. So I can kind of see the spectrum on both ends. So it's been great working here at Autodesk, and it's where I wanted to be. So I'm super happy to be here. Nice. And thanks again, guys, for having me on.
Anytime. So, all right. So, we asked Dave and John to be on the show today to talk about some really important concepts in the civil space that they kind of dropped on the Autodesk public at AU this year, and kind of how those are going to impact all of our infrastructure listeners. In particular, we're going to talk about collaboration for Civil 3D, all right, or what John was calling C4C3D. And no, that is not a Star Wars character, no matter what it sounds like. And please, George Lucas, if you ever listen to this, don't sue me for infringement. Look, this concept of centralizing the civil design into the cloud and integrating it with tools like, BIM 360 and sheet structures and, upcoming offerings like Autodesk Forma. It's a fundamental shift, I think, in the way that we conceptualize and develop and share civil design information with various project stakeholders. All right. So Dave, let's start with the basics, right? What is C4C3D and why is it important to everybody listening?
Yeah, and I've been living this now for a few years, and it's been just a joy, actually, just to realize, I think, a significant change like this. Like I said, I went from land desktop to Civil 3D, so from a real, into that 3D modeling, BIM modeling level environment, and this is just as exciting for those who've gone through that. First of all, when we talk about C4C3D or collaboration with Civil 3D, it's a service that's available, as part of BIM Collaborate Pro, right? So, if you have that subscription, you're enabled to basically have the modeling capabilities of civil. So think about creating data shortcuts, referencing data shortcuts, all those project level interactions. You're able to, leverage all of that inside of Autodesk Docs. The thing that you're going to hear John and I probably harp on repeatedly today, and if there's, these two things that people listening today, take away from an importance or value to them, it's right. Number one, it's a complete change, I think, in the way our teams have had their work environment or where the data is stored, managed, accessed, right? So it takes away all of those concerns and challenges of, am I inside or outside the firewall, or am I in a different location? Am I working with people in different organizations that I have to kind of rapidly expand or reduce? So it's a complete change in that regard for the better. And then it's a fundamental change in making the models and the files that we create, or actually, let me say that more as the models. I think that's the better way to describe it. The models and all of their intelligence, so that they're available outside of Civil 3D. Right? We've always struggled with really, Civil 3D was the only tool really that had the ability to interact with a Civil 3D drawing. Know what the objects were, be able to view them in 2D and 3D, things like that. And, this just opens that up, and it makes those models available to everybody for, issue tracking and coordination with architects and a bunch of other, operations throughout the life cycle. So those are the things that, if you're listening to the webcast, to this podcast here, I take those, two key things away. It really is a dramatic change, and I think the opportunities that you have.
Yeah, it's a great concept in pulling that data out of a silo structure into something that can be shared across.
Yep.
So, John, let's ask you then, what do you see as the big value points of C4, C3D, right? That our Autodesk listeners out here need to know about to start planning usage in their own companies.
Well, I think you're going to definitely hear some of the things that Dave just mentioned, but one of the big values, again, is the fact that multiple users are going to be able to contribute towards one project model, all right? So it's all regardless of their location and in a secure environment, right? So even small projects are going to have multiple stakeholders, all right? So these stakeholders are going to contribute their project data into that one common data environment, and then be able to push out just the data that they want, right? So let me give you a scenario. So I'm in my project, I have a civil engineer, a surveyor, an architect. Let's keep it simple. So the surveyor will contribute their data, all right, and they'll present what's called a package, all right, a data package, and that puts out the data that they want you to use for design at that time, and you could consider that the most up-to-date data, right? So you don't have to worry about it being the most up-to-date data. The architect and the civil do the same thing, and they share that data across in that common data environment. And they can do that and know that that information is, number one, up-to-date and the latest and greatest information. Number two, they're able to access that from anywhere, all right, because it is in the cloud. And then they can coordinate that information too. What it does is it helps with project coordination. It helps with all of the stakeholders being on the same page. They can share that design data from Civil 3D, like Dave talked, which is something that we've done in the past on a WAN-LAN type situation, with data shortcuts across the inside of your own company, maybe. But being able to create those data shortcuts and push that information out in the cloud and have people access that through the cloud is a huge, huge thing, and a big part of C4 C3D. And I don't want to exclude being able to use the Cloud First Sheet Set Manager. And that's the first time you've heard that today, but I think Dave may update us on that just a little bit here later on, so I don't want to steal any of his thunder. So
there you go. All right. So, and it's a great thing you brought that up, right? Because, a couple of the things that really kind of caught my attention from AU around C4 C3D were the Cloud First Sheet Set Manager and the desktop connector upgrades. Look, I've been using Sheet Set Manager in Civil 3D for years now, and I know that the desktop connector, right, it handles all the synchronization between your cloud and your local versions of your design files. And this new release, I think, adds some nice features to each of those tools. So Dave, let's start with the desktop connector, right? What systems does it work with, and what are the big new additions to it in this current release?
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, desktop connector really that's the heart of collaboration for Civil 3D. So, the super simple way of looking at it is this is the way that we have a local cache that is always up to date with what is the source of truth, which is in Autodesk Docs. And when you think about something like Civil 3D, which is based on AutoCAD, we're talking about not one file, but many files that are referenced, whether they be XREFs or data shortcuts. It could be images, it could be source data, such as a point file that's going to be used to build a surface, MMS files. It's just this big laundry list of I don't know if I could say rat's nest, but this collection of referenced files that come together to form your model and your deliverables. And so Desktop Connector ensures that are different authoring applications. So in my case, Civil 3D, but it would be the same for Recap or Navisworks or Revit's a little bit different. Revit partially leverages Desktop Connector for reference files, but also has another system for cloud work sharing. But so think of an AutoCAD user or a Civil 3D user. When I open a file, similar to when I was working on a LAN, I need to know that when I open that file, it's going to lock, and then when it's also going to make sure that it resolves all of my references, whether it's an XREF or a DREF, and the resolution is not only did it find the file, but it has the latest version of the file. So it's keeping these things in sync and making sure you have the right things on your machine. And then when you make a save, the file has to be uploaded, and we have to release the lock. That's kind of the base of it, right? So Desktop Connector is that core engine. So it's been around for a while, and in its in its initial release or technology stack, it was built in a way that I think we found didn't scale to what we needed when we really get into the complicated AutoCAD-based files. Like I said, we get files that have hundreds of references, and to make sure that we have all of those references correct, and we have all of the ways that AutoCAD or an application may actually want to use those references. Like there's a bunch of different ways we can have XREFs managed. Desktop Connector needed really to think a little bit differently. So what we've been working towards for quite some time now is really I guess a reimagination of how Desktop Connector thinks. And that's the latest release of this Desktop Connector. So it's not rebranded; it's still Desktop Connector, but the 16 version is fundamentally different. It's you're going to see high performance, including on very large projects, much higher level of resilience. You're going to see consistency in the locking behavior. So it's not just locking of AutoCAD and Civil files, but it's also locking of an Excel document or Word document or anything basically that the application says it should lock and unlock. Desktop Connector will enable that. Things like a better experience. So it's much clearer to you if there are conflicts or issues. It'll guide you through understanding and then helping to resolve those things. The other thing I would say is that it's just fully woven into Windows Explorer. So, things that you kind of expect to be able to do, like creating a folder, renaming a file, dragging and dropping, creating a zip, and things like that, are all just naturally part of it now, as opposed to being, things that we had to, create new tools to make to complete those types of tasks. Mm-hmm. So fundamental change, really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and I like the concept, like you said, of weaving it into what people do on a daily basis. It just makes it so much more accessible when it works the way they've always worked.
Yep.
So it's a great concept.
Exactly. Yep. So, exactly.
Okay. So John.
Yeah, the goal just to chime on, just to add on that, the goal here, right, is you don't even notice it. That's the goal. The goal is when you open a file, Desktop Connector just behind the scenes is going to make sure that you have what you need, and it's just transparent to you. I use that word a lot with this environment. It's transparent to the Civil 3D user, and that's what I think we've really reached that level when we get into this this latest version of Desktop Connector.
Yeah, I like that. So all right, so John, let's talk about Sheet Set Manager. Right, Sheet Set Manager has been around for a while, and I use it all the time. But why do you think it's still an important feature for people who are listening to this podcast?
Well, number one, let's go ahead and before we even talk about you said Sheet Set Manager, not Cloud First. So we'll wait to talk about that. So the Sheet Set Manager, if you've never used the Sheet Set Manager, and I am guilty of this. I went the longest time being in production, and I did not use it. All right, because frankly, I did not know how it all worked. I was afraid it was difficult, and I was under deadlines just like everybody else. And I didn't think I had time to take advantage of it. Well, guess what? I made a huge mistake, and it took me a little while, but I jumped into it, and it takes zero time to figure out, and it is a huge time saver. So I said that in the past, I worked at larger companies and then smaller companies where it was just me and an engineer. You can utilize the sheet set manager in both environments, in all environments, because it basically houses an entire project's worth of design sheets in one location, okay, in the sheet set itself. So that means there can be more than one author or just one author, okay? So all of those different disciplines that are pumping sheets out for this particular project, all of the stakeholders, they can put all of their design sheets in that one location. And it is the only way that you can manage text inside of title blocks holistically, okay? So meaning the name of the sheet name, the date, things of that nature. If you've got 150 sheets, the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is you want to go through and change the date for every one of those sheets. That's in 16 separate drawings, okay? So that is a huge, huge time saver. And inside of Civil 3D, you have the plan production tools. And those plan production tools pump out plan and profile sheets. They pump out cross-section sheets very, very, very quickly. And those can easily be added to a sheet set. And then it's the easiest way to plot. So you can plot to PDF, you can plot to a plotter, so on and so forth. Instead of going through and actually typing plot, preview, and OK at every sheet, you can do that through the sheet manager or the sheet set tools. So that is why you want to use the sheet set tools. And why if you haven't, I'm begging you to try it.
And I would back that up. Like I said, I've been using them for years. I don't know how you got through without using them. Particularly with the plan production sheets. It's brilliant.
It was
All right. So like I said, right, John said it best, I think, right? Sheet set manager, it's great as it is, as it stands today. So Dave, right, let's move on to the next step here, which is, what are the key benefits of this cloud first version of sheet set manager that people need to know about?
Yeah, I mean, and I think John, a couple of key things John said, right? It's really conceivably countless numbers of files that are involved when we're looking at a list of sheets that are in a sheet set. So, any one drawing that you may open can have countless references and so on. And if we want to do a, plot to PDF of a sheet set, think of this as like this rapid opening, locking, plotting, closing, unlocking process for, any number of sheets, any number of drawings. And what we found with the first generation of desktop connectors, it didn't really, scale to that, to what was needed there. So what we looked at, what the AutoCAD team, I think, really led us with here was rather than just trying to refine what's already there, they kind of looked at, this is an opportunity. So we have some assets, and some of those I think people are probably not familiar with, but one of them is Forge Design Automation. And think of this as Civil 3D running in the cloud without any interface, but we can use it to run repetitive procedures. Sheet set, plotting of sheets is a perfect example of where this is a great environment. So we have that as kind of, think of our processing engine. And then we also have, this whole focus on cloud first user experiences. So think of, you have AutoCAD Web, which is a, pure cloud, environment. And then you have desktop products like AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So what the team was able to figure out is, here's how we could make a common experience, common UI, that can be this exact same experience, whether you're on AutoCAD Web or whether you're on a desktop product like Civil or AutoCAD. And rather than trying to move files local to your desktop, if you want to, do something, plot to PDF as an example, rather than trying to move all those files local and go through that churn of opening and closing, et cetera, it was like, wow, we could be far more efficient to the user if we just actually let that all happen up in that cloud engine, that cloud processing engine. So that's what you have here, is this new environment. It's a common interface. that we've exposed in multiple places. It leverages the cloud for all the processing, so it takes all the burden off of your local machine, both in moving files to and from, but then also for those heavy lifting, processing things like plot to PDF. And then, think about as we kind of go forward, we can also start to expose this in other ways. So one that I think is particularly interesting is, wouldn't it be nice if I could be in Autodesk Docs and right-click on a DST file and open up that same interface and plot to PDF, or change, a property from a reviewer, to a different state, and have that, process in my sheets. So it was a really, I think a brave decision by the AutoCAD team to not just, continue down the legacy path, and really to think about what's a better way to solve the problem that gives us, I think, a more future, I don't want to say future-proof, but, something that really, lets us scale for where we want to go in the future. So really excited about it.
No, and it's a wonderful concept. I love the way that idea works. So Rocco, you're sleeping over there, right? Let's wake you up. So in terms of our clients here at Zentech, right, how important are these civil tool updates and specifically the collaboration features that we're talking about here today? How important is it for them, and do they look to us for a lot of help in those arenas?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more of a need out there, right? I mean, we work with customers from large to small, and a lot of customers that are really behind, and honestly, in the technology. And so Autodesk has invested a huge amount in advancing Civil 3D. I mean, if you think about everything that all the stuff that we've gone through with the various guests that we bring on from Autodesk, and so it's really come a long way. We do get a lot of folks that are interested in deploying this technology, and of course, the Autodesk solutions are not cheap by any means, but you got to hand it to Autodesk. They're pushing technology to its limits and bringing people into the current age with it, which is hugely important. So we're here. Obviously, Autodesk puts out a lot of resources, but Zentech can help with the training and support and configuration and setup of these solutions. So
yeah, absolutely,
definitely exciting.
Yeah, and like you said, you know what? It's all about your ROI, right? It's getting the most out of better, more efficient, and more proficient folks get you more money. So that's why everybody invests in it. So look, as everybody out there listening can imagine, right? When you're talking about collaboration tools, right? We're really discussing better ways to communicate and improve workflows when we're sharing design data back and forth between, design firms and owners and agencies and other stakeholders on your job. And that often means we need to leave older processes behind and onboard some better, more efficient ones to make the work go smoother at all levels. So Dave, right, in your position, you have seen a lot of workflows come and go over the years. What we'll call them archaic processes do you see falling by the wayside as we advance with these C4, C3D concepts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's really a few here. At the heart of it, I think about the investment that companies make in acquiring the equipment and having to maintain and then maintain security for their LAN, right? Their local servers, mm-hmm. right? The cost and the risk of that. I think that's one of those things that, this kind of an environment allows people to break free of that. And that's a challenge for some, right? I understand some people, there are limitations in file, in data location and sovereignty and such, and we're working through those. But I think fundamentally, as we go forward, right, that's the big thing. Is it's a company doesn't can reduce their investment in things that they don't necessarily need to anymore. I think then the data. We've always struggled. The other part would be we've always struggled with, I think, how models are. I don't want to say interoperable, but how across discipline and across the entire organization, people can interact with models. So things like, I think we'll always have the need to get a Revit model into Civil 3D and civil objects into Revit, right? We'll always need that at an authoring standpoint, but I think this alleviates a lot of the reasons why that would have had to happen in the past, right? Now for coordination, I can bring it into this this kind of agnostic environment where I can see both. So I can see my Revit model, my civil model, my recap point clouds all in the same place for clash detection and such. And so I think it's a completely different, I think I put that in that category of eliminating an archaic process, that coordination part. Doing design review by PDF, email, paper plots, all of that, I think that all goes away. I don't think anyone will miss that. And then the other one, this gets into like Civil and AutoCAD in particular, but it's like we've seen it over and over again where if I need to get data to you so you can act upon it or you leverage it somehow, you would probably, especially in a complicated project, it would probably be days of trying to figure out how to repath files, how to, make all these connections work again. And it's like, that goes away. It's like, I just want to add you to this project, or I want to use, Doc's Bridge, and basically give you a kind of a in-sync copy of the model of the project. So I think, those kind of jump out to me as the things that we can see back in our rearview mirror.
I like it. All right. So John, from your end, right, what important concepts do you need to kind of get in front of end users, right, to show them the real benefits of using these tools for things like, collaborating on reviews and updating changes and markups, things like that?
Well, just the improvement they'll see in the collaboration alone, right? Being able to go into Docs and just physically select a drawing and see where that drawing is at that certain time, which would be real time, which leads right into the ability, like you said, to review more efficiently by creating issues inside of Docs. Those issues, when you create them and you assign them directly to the person that needs to, number one, I guess we could just say fix the issue or look at the issue and then collaborate with their person downstream to make the issue go away. And then they have to close the issue. So we've done a round trip there, right? So it makes people more accountable. The whole process is more accountable, makes everybody more accountable in the process. Being able to use for the design engineer that may be reviewing plans, I can tell you wholeheartedly from the past, Dave was talking about archaic processes. We would plot a set of drawings, lay them on the design engineer's desk. It may be a couple days before they look at it. They would finally look at it and you would get it back and they would have drained an entire red pen. Okay. Then you have to go through sheet by sheet and make these changes. With the markup tools inside of Autodesk Docs, you can do the markups real time, sheet by sheet, and keep track of things day to day. It doesn't have to be where you wait for something to be plotted so that you can review a check set. It's always there. You can always look at it, and you can look at it not only on your machine in the office, but you can look at it on your tablet and make decisions there. So you don't hold up the review process or the design process, because the design engineer and the designer can make those decisions, or the design engineer and the architect can make those decisions and see the same data because it's in that common data environment. And overall, this can be done by everyone that's that's part of the project. Okay, so you can set up permissions, specific permissions for a review process. You can set up. There's just a lot. My brain's going 100 miles an hour. Of how many different things that you could throw out there that it's way more efficient, and on top of that, it's all in a secure environment. So,
yeah, it's a brilliant concept. I love it. So, okay, all right, folks. So let's take a quick break so we can hear from today's sponsor. And when we get back, I want to get into a bit more detail with Dave and John on the workflow processes that kind of come along with these C4, C3D concepts. All right, so stand by, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's episode of the Cattle Call podcast is brought to you by Zen-Tech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. We're bringing ourselves to you. Aren't we nice? So we wanted to talk to you guys today about some of the things that we offer at Zen-Tech Consultants. In particular, we wanted to talk to you today about our offerings around developing and upgrading your CAD standards. We are here to help you guys with all of your CAD standard needs, from ongoing drafting and design support to block and library development, full CAD standards development, right? CAD version upgrades, really whatever it is that you guys need when it comes to developing, implementing, and tweaking your current CAD standards. Or like I said, if you don't have any yet, we can help you build them from scratch. So Rocco, why don't you tell all the good folks how they can reach out to us and start that conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, people, on our website, zentechconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK consultants.net. Or you can give us a call, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
Ooh, nice. CAD standards from Zen-Tech Consultants. You're listening to the Cattle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cattle Call podcast. We're talking with Dave Simeone and John Sayre of Autodesk about the latest updates and expansions to the Collaboration for Civil 3D world, and how they benefit, right, Autodesk civil and infrastructure users. In the first half of the show, we were discussing general concepts of this C4, C3D process. And in this half, I'd like to get a little bit more of a, I guess we'll call it a procedural roadmap on how to get these types of structures running and what it really takes to get them implemented from both, a technical and a business practice view, right? I think it's always important to kind of start with the business case, right? To get that top level support for changes and, implementations like this. So I kind of want to start there. So John, what are the key business benefits that our listeners should be focusing on, when they're trying to pitch the importance of C4 or C3D to senior management?
Well, on the civil side, right? So architects have been using Revit in this environment for a while, okay? And they've been having great success with it. Now we're able to actually duplicate that usage and coexist in the same environment, which is a huge, huge thing, all right? That in itself increases the collaboration between the two different entities. I say entities, civil engineers and architects. Dave and I had this conversation a little while ago, and customers have been saying, they don't want to replace their land. Okay, that can mean a couple things. They don't want to replace their land, meaning they don't want to spend the money to upgrade their land, their internal land. And yes, they actually want to get rid of their land. They don't want that overhead of the in-house environment anymore. All right. They have to pay for, all the connections for the land. They have to pay for the servers. They have to pay for maintenance. They have to have somebody maintain that, and they have to pay for security on it, and all of these different things they have to worry about. And in this centralized environment in the cloud, you don't have that. Okay. And again, you have the access of all of the information that's on that project from anywhere, because it is in the cloud and working from the power of the cloud.
Which is nice. Okay, I like that. So Dave, then kind of looking at this from a little bit more of a technical standpoint, right? How simple or difficult do these new updates make it for companies to collaborate both internally and externally?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of, I guess, lenses to look through when we talk about, simple to difficult, right? I think at a macro level, I think an organization has to work with experienced people to guide them through how they're going to just set up their docs projects, right? Similar to like us not just trying to retrofit the legacy sheet set manager, right? It's an opportunity, I think, for organizations to think about how they want the structure of their projects, permissions, who they want, to grant access to for different roles. It is, a lot of companies have had the same structure forever, and it may be exactly the right structure, but, they should look first at how should we configure ourselves when we're working in this new environment. which is going to give us the best chance for, getting all those, broad benefits that we talked about. That said, to the Civil 3D user itself, right, it's just a matter of I'm installing Civil 3D with all the latest updates. I'm installing Desktop Connector. And the system is kind of, I used the word transparent earlier, and I'd use it again, right? I launch Civil 3D. Civil 3D looks the same. I open a file, and rather than the file being on my C drive or my Z drive, it's going to be, in a Docs project. And I navigate to the Docs project. I open the file. Desktop Connector, make sure I have what I need when I open it. We have those files then locally cached. That cache is persistent, so it's up to date all the time. And I just use Civil 3D just like I've always used Civil 3D. There's really no change to the workflow to the Civil user. So if you're a Civil expert, you might have the new sheet set manager. You're going to, learn how that new workflow works. But other than that, there's really nothing that's specifically, nothing changes, I think, in your experience and your workflow to make it so it's tuned or specific to, this new environment. It also happens behind the scenes. But like I said, I think the investment is where I think on just how you want to set up your projects in Autodesk Docs itself, so that you can maximize the benefit.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think you make a really valid point there, and it's one of the things we do as consultants, right? We talk to people all the time that anytime you're making a change, it's the perfect opportunity to not just say, well, we want it to do what it's always done. Look at it and say we want it to be better. Right? That's always the hardest thing to get people to bite on. But yeah, I think you also make a really good point there. That at least in my mind, right, a key component of any collaboration system or process, really, it needs to be how easily that can be adapted to the existing workflows if they're good, right? Rather than, adapting, quality corporate workflows to the software solution because that's all the software can do, right? And look, don't get me wrong, there's always adjustment required for any new technology. But generally, like we were saying, right, most people are going to look for tools that enhance or optimize, right, rather than replace their current internal processes, right? Everybody's always resistant to the idea of having to start back at square one with a new tool or an entirely new feature set. So Dave, how is C4 C3D, the solution, adapted to support and integrate with current workflows and processes for clients?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, to the person in the seat 8 hours a day, banging away on Civil 3D, it's not going to be all that different. There are some things that are in place today that I think are purpose-built for this environment. So, for example, like the shared surface, topo surface command, where it can basically publish the surface out of Civil and then consume it in Revit. Right? That's a purpose-built new workflow that changes, I think, the approach that teams can use to move data from one authoring application to another. I think it's, to step back a teeny bit, our focus right now has really been about how do we have a great daily experience for the Civil production use, where, with the latest of the Desktop Connector, this latest Desktop Connector release, the 16 and above versions, as well as Sheet Set Manager, I think we're at that point where we can say with confidence, this is a great experience for people, great solution. Now the question becomes, what are some of the things that we can enable? So one, as an example, so some of these are kind of forward-looking, but there are things that are, I think, in our planning at various levels, right? But what's the experience around markup and issue management? Beyond just, can I have something that's in the cloud? But I really, as John said, I've got all the red lines that were in PDF. Ultimately, it's going to be the person at the CAD station, in Civil 3D who's going to have to make some modification, whether it's moving a label or whether it's moving a pipe. So I need that. I need to have that full workflow of markups and issue tracking integrated into my desktop products as well. So example, like if I look at, Revit's further along than we are on the Civil side. Revit has, this workflow in place today. And those are the types of things that they don't necessarily change the way I use Civil 3D to move a manhole, or catch basin, but it certainly changes how I as a Civil 3D user in my CAD environment, authoring environment, am aware of it and have information that lets me know why I need to move it, where I need to move it to. That makes sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that's
Okay.
and that's 90% of the struggle, right? I mean, really. I mean,
Right.
all of us having come from this civil background, we did this for a lot of years, getting the data, understanding why and where is it coming from and communicating it is the hardest part. Like you said, moving a manhole, that's moving a manhole. Anybody can do that. It's finding out where and how and why and at what invert and those are the important things. So cool.
And confirming that it's been done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saying,
and everybody know
that task has been complete. Yep.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So John, let me ask you this: what do you think are the most important, or at least the most used, we'll say, workflows in the design world that C4 C3D kind of really helps people get a better handle on?
Well, I think we start with sheets. Let's keep it simple, okay? There's a lot that it helps with, and a lot of different workflows that you're going to definitely use C4 C3D like a power tool in your day-to-day work. But let's start with just sheets like we've been talking. If you've used the sheet set manager that's currently there in the local LAN environment, then you realize what you're missing if you don't use it. If you've never used it, then just using the sheet set manager itself would be monumental. Now, we take that a step further with the Cloud First Sheet Set Manager. Then you're able to actually grab information from all over. All right, it's not just under roof or it's everyone that's collaborating on the project in the cloud. It's a little bit, I don't want to say a hard concept to understand, but it's when you start to think about it, because these projects are in the cloud, you could have 5 different folks collaborating on the project, or you could have 50, and they could all be contributing things design-wise, and they could be contributing sheets, like I said earlier, talking into the lens of sheets, period. They could be contributing sheets to the project. That's something that's very difficult to manage, period. Okay, and because we have this new feature, right, we can take advantage of that and look at everything in one central location and have our fingertips be able to go out and touch that design data also, because it is in the cloud. The second thing is being able to share civil data across the cloud. Okay, and when I say share civil data, I mean use data shortcuts. Share out your surfaces, share out your alignments and profiles, because I remember in-house, we would have somebody working on roads, somebody working on sewer, somebody working on storm, somebody working on a grading piece that didn't have to do with roads, but everybody needed to understand and work off of what the other person was designing. And we did that with data shortcuts. Now that we are being able to do that same thing in the cloud allows other people that are outside of your particular company, allows them to be able to utilize that information too in their Civil 3D environment, all right, which is huge. Okay, they get updates whenever say a surface is updated. All right, that surface is updated. That person saves it, updates the shortcut. Guess what? Whoever's touching that surface from the cloud is going to get that update. That is, again, monumental when you look at saving time across the project, making sure that the information is up to date, things of that nature. So,
yeah, no, those are great things. So Rocco, let me ask you this, then, right? You're kind of taking John and Dave's last couple of answers here into account, right? In terms of collaboration and file sharing and markup and being able to handle these important workflows. Where does this kind of fall on the interest scale of our infrastructure base, right? How many of our clients are actively looking to better those workflows versus, how many need, us to bring it to their attention?
Yeah, I mean, in the age of increased collaboration, right? People working from home and, from New Jersey to California on active projects. I mean, this is huge, right? And it's technology that we could only have dreamed of years ago. And it's a necessity, right? I mean, we've got to get into a more modern age of working. And so we're definitely seeing more of our customers with interest. And again, I encourage folks that are investing a lot of money in the Autodesk technology to deploy this technology, use it. I mean, we're talking about a time where there's also shortages, in employees, and these tools help to increase productivity. So from a business standpoint, it just makes sense to put this technology to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't just let it sit there without use because you're worried about learning something new. So I agree with that 100%. So, all right. So it is tradition here on the Cattle Call to give our guests the last word by letting them tell us something about the day's topic that I just wasn't smart enough to ask them about. So, John, we're going to start with you first, sir. What else do you want our listeners to know about the benefits of C4C3D?
Well, I mean, I believe, again, it all goes back to improve collaboration, improve data exchange. If you're using Civil 3D and you want to work in a accommodative environment and not worry about a LAN-WAN environment, you will definitely benefit from C4C3D inside of BIM Collaborate Pro. If you don't want to worry about having the latest design information from others, you're definitely going to see benefit from using C4C3D. Being able to do, again, I keep harping on and going back to collaboration. There's so much with model coordination and things of that nature that really comes to light whenever you start to bring in all of the different data from all of the different folks that are putting together this project. When you can take a Revit model and put it right on top of your civil model, and at the drop of a hat, basically, just inside of a internet browser, that's huge. Okay, being able to do that is huge, and you might not have done that in the past. We've had some of that capability in other products like Navisworks and things of that nature in the past, of being able to do model coordination, obviously, and then clash detection, things of that nature. But this is all you're not opening a piece of software to do that. You're doing it directly inside of the cloud and in a web browser, and you're getting the most up-to-date information. I know that sounds like I'm beating a dead horse per se, but it's I just can't beat that. Say that enough that it does increase that experience. It just makes it that much better.
It is. It's an amazing concept. So Dave, I'm going to ask you the same question, right? But maybe take it from, the standpoint of your position at Autodesk, right? What else do you think is important that people should consider about C4C3D?
Yeah, I think John nailed the why this is important and how it's game changing. The thing I actually would like to kind of reiterate is, I think people need to understand the level of investment that we've made and are continuing to accelerate. And it's beyond the civil resources within Autodesk, right? So if you look at Autodesk in the scope of the company, Autodesk Docs, BIM Collaborate Pro, that whole solution is obviously a major investment that's accelerating. And a couple takeaways, I think, for the folks who are listening, right? Number one, we're investing heavily to play well in that world. But then because once we're in that world, we benefit from the investments that other teams are making, right? So we're not having to not having to invent ourselves like model coordination or clash detection or, bringing files out into the field, right? There are teams that are already working on that. And once we get our models into this environment, we leverage and benefit what exists by others. So it really think about exponentially how quickly we can grow things, right? So I think the point I would make is confidence in the investment, in the direction, and our ability to get there. The other thing I would say, because this is, C4C3D is not new, and it's taken us a little while to get here. And if you look at, I've had an interesting perspective, right? Because I worked on, I was PM for Civil 3D in its initial, early days up until just the last few years, and so. It's when you do something like Civil 3D or when you do something like collaboration for Civil 3D, it's a hard problem to solve when you really think about everything that has to happen. And it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And the point that we're at right now is based, it's really a reflection of all of the learnings over this first phase. And, that brings us to the release of, this latest desktop connector, this next generation of desktop connector, which is fundamentally different. And the delivery of this new, cloud first sheet set manager. I mean, they're I think the result of the learnings and what we found for the people who have been working with us closely over the past few years. So I think it's, I just can't stress enough. I think the benefits are there clearly. I think where we're at, I'm really excited about the level of stability and quality, and confident telling, people they can really use this on any scale or size project. But I think people really also have to look at, what's this going to look like in a year? What's this going to look like in 2 years? And I'm super excited about, I think, energized about where we're going to be able to go in, the solutions we're going to be able to provide. So that's kind of where I would like to leave it.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. The concept, right? It took a little while to get the boulder rolling. You knew where you wanted to go, but now it's got full momentum and speed behind it.
Yep.
And it's going to be really cool to see where this ends up. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm real excited about this stuff. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So, all right, folks, we're going to leave it there for today with those brilliant pieces of advice from our guests. And I want to thank Dave and John again for taking time out of their very busy schedules to be here with us. And I hope Rocco hasn't scared you so much that you guys won't come back on the show again. All right. So, But really, honestly, we do greatly appreciate both of you guys taking the time to be here today. Thank you again.
Thank you,
It's our
guys.
pleasure. Yep. Thank you guys so much.
All right, folks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, John. All right, guys, we're going to bounce out of here, and we will catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from y'all.